welcome, welcome. My name is Damon Brown. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. Bring Your Worth TV comes live to you on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free here on YouTube or on the other platforms that you can catch me on. All the links are below. You see what's happening. And I am also the author of the complete Bring Your Worth collection, my 27th book, containing almost all, almost all of my major business books. You can get it wherever fine books are sold or get signed copies signed by my little hands over at damonbrown.net. Guess they're not that little, but yeah. I come from a family that people have really big hands. And it's like it didn't get passed on to me. You can catch Bring Your Worth TV on Twitch. Hopefully, you're watching on there. Be sure to subscribe so we can support the new platform over on Twitch. Twitch is a video game platform. If you know my background, you know my background is in video games. So I'm happy to be hanging out with my people. You can also watch classic episodes of Bring Your Worth over at Spotify. They started doing video now. Shout out to Spotify. And so if you're a Spotify subscriber, tongue twisters today. If you're a Spotify subscriber, then you can go ahead and subscribe for free on there. All of it is free. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out. In case you missed it, I actually just did a keynote, which is one of the reasons why you haven't had an episode in a week or two. I just did a keynote over at the Entertainment Community Fund. Shout out to y'all. It's actually available to members. Entertainment Community Fund, they are fantastic. They're a nonprofit. They've been around for a while. They have Annette Bening and other major folks, actors and actresses that are on their board. Their main thing is to support the people who are supporting Hollywood. So not just the actors and actresses and so forth, but also the voice actors, also the key grips, also the best boys, if you guys know what that is. All these different people, they support them. It's very similar to the American Society of Journalists and Authors, which I used to be a board member of, and I still support. I just did a keynote for them about 2 years ago with ASGA. It's like the equivalent of that, but for Hollywood. And so ASGA supports freelancers who are working within the media system. This is similar, but working with folks who are in the Hollywood system, also independents as well, but mostly in Hollywood and LA, as well as branches, of course, in New York, Atlanta, and other places across the country. I think they have some folks in Canada. I've coached some folks over there. Shout out to y'all. You know who you are. Hope you're doing wonderful. But they had me do a keynote talking about how to thrive as an entrepreneur. It was a fantastic experience. It was such a supportive community. A few hundred of y'all came through, which I appreciate. If you're involved in the acting and or Hollywood or movie producing community, you have like accredited roles, that kind of thing, similar to the American Society of Journalists and Authors with journalists, then be sure and check them out. The whole keynote is behind their wall, so be sure and check it out. I believe it's free. I believe it's available for replay now. Happened a couple weeks ago, but shout out to them. Thank you for having me. And it's always good to give back to community in that way too, particularly for the nonprofits. And I've been an independent hustler for a long time. See the gray hairs. So, any way that I can give back to the community, I am all for it. In case you missed it, I had a triple feature. It's not that long, probably about 30 minutes. Don't be intimidated. But I had a triple feature. I believe this was last week. Discover the power of stoic thinking to improve your life, where I talked about three different episodes over the years. You see, like aging in real time over the course of the past 5 years. Three the best episodes about stoic thinking. I promise I'll be doing a fresh live show about stoicism later on this year. Shout out to Ryan Holiday and other folks who are really talking about it. And this actually breaks down some of those basics, as well as one of my favorite theories from the classic Stoic philosophers. Be sure and check that out if you haven't already. Today's show, Pivot Your Career. There's a lot going on. We're hanging out live. It's first week of April 2025 here in the United States. And it's a wild time. Um, I want to say approaching 100,000 federal workers have lost their jobs because of budget cuts and some pretty egregious decisions based on the current government. It's a period of time where recession is the word that's on everyone's lips, though. If you know your economics, we've been kind of in a recession for a few years. There's people that are near and dear to me who have lost their jobs just in the last few days, real time. As I was coming up with this episode, I'm like, let's talk about that. Yes, there's the power of um, having your own lane, of creating your own businesses. I have a few businesses myself. That's one of the reasons why I'm able to sustain myself as well as my kids, my family. And then there's also the decision to get a traditional, more quote unquote secure job, but then the rug kind of gets pulled from under you. Me being independent and creating this channel and having my self-published books with Green York Publishing and being an independent coach and all these other things, those were choices. And so my heart goes out to folks who did not choose to be independent. And suddenly you're like, oh, I got to figure this out, you know? So as much as I talk about independence and creating your own way and all those other things on this channel, I also respect this isn't for everyone. A lot of folks where this isn't for them are struggling as far as figuring out where they're going to go career wise, especially with uncertainty with, again, particularly with the American government, uncertainty with the wars going on, plural, even the wars we don't talk about it as much, and all the rapid changes happening. So today we're going to talk about how you can pivot your career, how you can kind of rediscover, or I hate the word reinvent, but I can't think of a better word, reinvent your identity, your skill set, to make yourself more available to the opportunities that are out there, and also most importantly, how to build multiple streams of income. Because if you have one particular source or income that you're leaning on, then it can get pretty hairy. I will talk about my own experiences with that. Even though I'm independent, I still have fallen into that trap. Um, I talk about that in my newsletter, free newsletter, every Wednesday at joindamon.me. I talk about being haunted by the last lap. As if you click on the link, you'll see there's a nice little Mario Kart reference. Video games are definitely in the brain recently, probably because I've been playing a lot of games with my kids, so it's bringing back a lot of memories. Sometimes we end up getting so caught up in what we've done in the past. Again, haunted by the last lap. We get so caught up in those things that we're not able to see the opportunities in front of us. So it felt like a really apropos. It's my big word of the day. It felt apropos for to talk about that in the newsletter. If you want to go deeper, definitely check out the newsletter, subscribe, and help support the channel. And also some really good exclusive things I talk about within the newsletter that never gets the light of day here. All right, so let's talk about it. So the question I get a lot of, Coach, about a five or 700, 5 or 600. I promise I'm not making these numbers up. 5 to 600 of y'all, as a business coach, helping you level up your business, start your side hustles. We'll talk about that briefly too, and all those things. That's one of the biggest questions that I've gotten over the years: is how do I do my career pivot? Where does it start? If you're pivoting your career, it starts with first figuring out what you bring to the table, what makes you special. For me, uh, uh, I can listen to people talk all day, so I'm a strong listener. I do something called active listening, where someone will listen and then I'll respond based on whatever they were saying, and then that makes it clear to them. So it's called active or empathetic listening, depending on which school of thought you go through. I'm also fairly articulate as far as even my more complex or confusing emotions. I'm able to put them into words, which not everyone can do. Even when I'm overwhelmed, I'm able to articulate that. That's a strength. That's what people will call like a superpower. I know what those are. And so because I know what those are, then I can figure out how that would apply to whatever career is next for me. So it ends up being these core things. One of the things I talked about a lot, particularly when I did the book Career Remix about 3 or 4 years ago, was 2022. So it's 3 years ago. Time flies. But in 2022, I did Career Remix. Um, and the big slogan for that, which came from my coaching practice, is the job is theirs, but the career is ours. In other words, you can get fired from your job, like from an angry supervisor. You can get knocked out and laid off because of a merger or because of corporate cuts. Again, shout out to my folks that are federal and government employees that are feeling the pain right now. Those things can happen, but the skill sets that you have either innately, like you naturally have them. Like I naturally love telling stories. I naturally love hearing stories. I've always been like that. Luckily, all my parents are still around. They've said I've been like that since I was a toddler. So that's something that's innate. You have those things that a job can give you, like pay, obviously, benefits, 401k, all those things that all the great trappings that come with a traditional job, particularly a full time job. Those are blessings. But you're still taking your skill set with you. And in fact, if you're in their environment and you have the mindset of a learner, then whatever you get on that job, you're going to take it with you. Way back in the day, talking when I was a teenager, and I became a newspaper reporter. So my background is journalism, and me learning, working in the ad department, me working with artists and even doing some art myself, all those things. Even though I didn't go towards advertising and other things, I went in a different direction. Those skills still came with me. You still have your toolbox. So figuring out what you bring to the table as far as what your particular toolbox is. And then I think this is an important part is recognizing the part of you that's not utilized. So what's being underutilized right now? So if you're in a very fixed role in your career and you're like, okay, this is my identity. Let's say you're an ad manager. It's like, okay, so you're a salesperson. Bottom line, you're a salesperson. All you do is sales. You might not be working in the creative. The creative would be the people that are actually designing the ads, or doing the copy for the ads, the text, whether it's spoken or written down, like those other details. And you might be a really good writer, but since you're the ad manager, the main thing you're doing is sales. So sometimes when we have a particular job and we have a title, we assume that's the breadth or the width of the things that we can do. If you're looking to do a career pivot, you really have to shift from what the job title says to that toolbox that you have that shows what you're capable of. Once you do that, you can say, oh, I'm actually a decent artist, or I'm pretty good with words. So then, whatever you do next in your career, whether it's within that organization or outside of that organization, then it might be something related to words. So, separating, understanding what you bring to the table, and then separating those parts of you that are highlight, whatever the past tense is, in that job title that you've had maybe for a long time, and then recognizing those skills that you still have that are actually dormant. That's one of the strongest ways you can make a career pivot because you can recognize those parts of it. When I made a career pivot, I think it was around a time that my first son was born, and he's about to turn 12, so it's probably just over a decade ago. And I remember talking to my partner at the time and saying, "Hey, um, this journalism I've been doing, I don't think it's going to get us to where where we want to be, financially or otherwise." And of course, now it's easy to say that in 2025, as we're talking right now, because like, oh, of course, media is in a rough place. Well, we're going back, a dozen years ago, and there were still magazines on the stands that were doing okay, and newspapers were still thriving, and they weren't just owned by billionaires who had questionable motives. There weren't things that were like shifting elections and things like that. There's a little bit more of a clarity as far as the separation of church and state, for lack of a better term, with the newspaper business. So that was a tough decision, especially to say that, say that to my partner at the time, while we have a little kid, a little boy at home, a baby at the time, and it's like, hey, yeah, I'm realizing journalism isn't going to make it, isn't going to get us to where we want to be financially or otherwise. There wasn't anything wrong with journalism per se. I have 2 degrees in journalism. I've been a journalist for a couple decades at that point, maybe a little bit less, but I've been a journalist since I was a teenager. The pivot came though when I recognized that the path that journalism was going on wasn't for me anymore. And then that's when the startup started. That's when shortly after it was the TED Talks, and that eventually led to the best-selling books, the coaching practice, selling my startup Cuddler around the time that my son was 2, and led me to hanging out with y'all. But that was a conscious pivot. And so if you're not in a situation where you have to pivot, I would still encourage you to think about it from an analytical standpoint and be like, what are those parts of me that I bring to the table? And what are the parts of me that aren't being utilized right now and frankly might be undervalued? That's always a good practice. Again, I didn't have a gun to my head. No one was saying, hey, journalism might not be the thing for you. You know, you've been doing it for a very long time. No, that was a conscious process to say, okay, where I want myself, my family, and my legacy to be, my period of time of journalism, I think it's starting to wane. I think it's starting to sunset. What else is out there? And then within a couple years, it was Cudler, cover the Wall Street Journal, and I'm selling that startup, and then this whole new career that leads me to hanging out with y'all today. And so don't be afraid of that process to pivot, particularly if you don't have to. If we're talking about pivoting, we got to talk about my homie, Jenny Blake. Shout out to Jenny, another career coach. Jenny Blake's pivot. The only move that matters is your next one. See, I'm trying to read backwards. I know it by heart. You see his dog eared. I had like one of the first editions of the book signed. Like I don't know what I'm talking about. Jenny Blake is fantastic. Shout out to Jenny. You can learn more about her. I believe it's at jennyblake.com. I think you just do a quick Google search. I've linked to all of her books or her main book right here. Fantastic book. It goes step by step as far as how to pivot to the next stage of your career. I think it came out in 2000. I think it came out shortly after I sold Cutler. So this came out like a decade ago. I still refer darn near all my clients to it, particularly if they're trying to figure out where they're going to move to next. Fantastic book. And it's step by step. She's super analytical with it, which is a blessing. And so you can just follow the steps in this and you'll be in excellent shape. So check her out. Also, again, she's a career coach. So if you're looking for that deeper stuff, if you're trying to pivot more in a corporate fashion, which is more her energy, mine is more the independent folks, hers is more corporate, she's one to look up. And then this is really my jam. Five secrets to change and transition. Change and transition are not the same thing. Shout out to all my mentors and my family members who have told me as such. Such an important episode, such an important discussion. If you're going through change and transition, you have to take care um, of your external stuff, the logical part as far as the change, which is the change. And then transition is the internal stuff. How are you accepting it? What emotional needs do you need supported? What are you going to lose in this transition? Two separate things. We talk about in depth in this live show. I want to say it's about an hour and a half, but it's one of my favorite episodes that we've ever done. Be sure and check it out if particularly you're going through some challenges and pain with the recent stuff going on. Um, what about you? Are you going through a career pivot? Is it something that you decided on your own, or is it kind of an outside influence? Love to hear in the comments. And yeah, perhaps myself or another one of the viewers or listeners can support. So jump in there. Yeah. What do you think you need as far as to pivot your career? And is this something that you just feel like it's time to do? Or is some outside influence that's bringing some urgency? We'd love to hear. My entrepreneurial coach, Damon Brown. You're watching Bring Worth TV live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free. Another question that comes up quite a bit is, um, excuse me, is where do I begin redefining myself? When we have a change and transition, perhaps perhaps a loss that even would be favorable. You know, even lottery winners have some type of psychological challenges, even though it's something that they really wanted. Part of that has to do, part of the change and transition with that is us figuring out who we are in this new environment. Now, it might be you're not with someone anymore, which I've gone through. It's tough. It might be that you don't have this job title anymore. It might be that you have certain friends or at least close colleagues that you made within this work environment, excuse me, and you're not going to see them anymore. It's not on a regular basis. That's hard. Even as an independent like myself, I've gone in and consulted at places, particularly in recent years and all that. And the consultation or the business is done, and then that's it. So even that, even if you're independent, that becomes part of the transition. Where do I begin redefining myself? I think is really important because that becomes part of our identity. Even with shout out to people that I love that have gone through Alcoholics Anonymous or NA, which would be the narcotics version of it, or SA, I think it's called. Might not be SA because that means something else. But as far as with sexual addiction, those folks that I care about that have gone through addictions, one of the things that's come up quite a bit is that ends up being part of breaking the addiction is actually being thoughtful about your social circle. Because if you're an addict and your social circle is at the bar, it's not just a matter of you withdrawing from alcohol or whatever you're addicted to. It also is the loss of the social network. So that's why there's a redefinition that happens. Shout out to Black Star. But there ends up being a redefinition that ends up happening when you are transitioning into something else. That's why it's so important to talk about how you're redefining yourself. One of the ways that I've found that's easiest to redefine yourself, at least for me, when I've gone through, you can look at my LinkedIn page. I've had a lot of career redefinitions. One of the things that helps is defining what you aren't. What are you not about? I tend to be a very direct person, particularly as I get older, very direct. And so if someone asks my opinion about something, 99.9% of the time, I'm going to give them the truth. Be like, yeah, this is what it is. And I'll do it as kind as possible, but they're gonna they're gonna know where I stand. That's how I'm trying to express it. People tend to know where I stand. There's not a lot of, guessing. That's something that I kind of stand on. So there are other approaches, and there's a lot of people that I care about that don't have that approach. They might be like, well, I'm not sure where I stand, or I don't want to commit to standing on this because what if I change my mind later? And so they tend to be more cards to the chest. It's fine. Some people I love, some people I respect, they handle it differently. For me, that's kind of like what you see is what you get for the most part, right? Unless there's some definitive reason as to why not. So um, me being coy as far as how I feel about something, that's not that's not me. Any of y'all who have watched the show, particularly if you know me personally, you know that's not me. And so that's part of me defining who I am is understanding what I'm not. That's a really important part of the process. The second thing, if you're going to be redefining yourself or understanding the layers of yourself after you've had some type of loss or change, is observing who is in your circle. So if you have people in your circle who represent certain ideas or certain values, like if y'all tend to be very kind, like you're volunteering at soup kitchens, or you take a certain amount of your money and you pay tithes if you're involved with your church, synagogue, temple, what have you, or you take some of that and donate it to nonprofits. I tend to donate to nonprofits, particularly ones that I'm really supportive of. Like I was talking about with the Entertainment Community Fund and so forth at the top of the show. That those are certain values or characteristics. Those things are independent from whatever job you have. Those sometimes are independent of whatever environment you're in. And it could be something really, really simple. For instance, I'm really into super hot foods. The rest of my family is not. So I was the odd one out throwing extra jalapenos and extra hot sauce on everything when I was growing up. Then I met my former partner, also into really spicy stuff. We clicked, had a bunch of kids, got two of them, and now my kids eat all this spicy food. That's based on the circle that I created, but it's not based on the environment I was raised in. That's based on me. I'm really into spicy foods, but my parents and other folks that raised me aren't. So that doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that sometimes you end up being this anomaly. And so you can't just basically, you're going to want to look at your circle and find out what values you have in common and what standards, what culture you have. But don't let that limit you as far as what you could be, because you might have something a little extra in there, like my productivity for spice, that doesn't quite match your environment. That's equally important. And then when you're redefining or rediscovering these parts of yourself, there might be a part of you that's dormant that say, oh yeah, none of my family likes spice, but I really like spice. And that becomes what you end up building that next chapter on, such as me being with my former partner and having a bunch of kids who love spice. Now we're just a spicy family, but that's not based on the family that I was raised on. It's important to define those things. Again, as I talked about at the top of the episode, if you have a particular job title, particularly if you're not used to being independent. You get a certain job title, it's easy to think, oh, this is my identity. I went through that with journalism, where it's like I have 2 degrees in journalism, master's in magazine publishing. I am a journalist, capital J. And then that edge started to soften to a lowercase j. And then by the time I had my first kid, it was like, oh, actually, maybe there's no J there at all. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's journalism or whatever. They just made up a new term. But you know what I'm saying? Then suddenly the whole thing shifts. Being comfortable with that process, that's part of the journey. There's nothing wrong with that. And so the environment that you're in, maybe it doesn't support all these parts of you. But once you leave that environment or that environment goes away, then it's okay to reclaim those parts that you might have forgotten about. No guilt or shame about it. Just it's a grand opportunity. So as much pain or challenges you might be having with your transition, particularly career-wise, it's also a grand opportunity for you to go ahead and get those parts of yourself, not new parts of yourself, but more parts of yourself that, for whatever reason, were in the shadows. Shout out to Carl Jung. You're able to pull them out into the light and be like, oh, yeah, that's another part of me that I forgot about. If we're going to talk about being your true self and redefining yourself, got to talk about Noah for Merchant. Shout out to Noah for. Hope you're doing fantastic. The power of onlyness. Make your wild ideas mighty enough to dent the world. I'm talking slowly because I'm reading backwards. Again, I know what the subtitle is, but I just want to read out the front. Fantastic book. I got like 3 copies of it. This was signed, sealed, all that good stuff. So shout out to Nilifer. She has some great passages in here as far as being yourself. And it's worth looking up her TED Talks. I saw her on stage at TED. That's actually when we first met several years ago. Had a fantastic talk about the power of walking. Fantastic talk. Worth looking up. I think it's one of the 5%, top 5% watched TED Talks of all time. So she was killing it on stage. I'm so proud of her work. But this one in particular is fantastic. So many good analogies in here and real stories. Not even analogies, real stories. My favorite story is a guy in Philly. I wish I could remember his name. There was a guy in Philly who was trying to build a network. I think he was also working on like an incubator as in startups and getting people together, kind of like some of the work that I do, but I do it more ad hoc. But literally having a brick and mortar place where people can get together, talk about their startup ideas, even get investment, but basically a gathering place for people who are doing startups. And he was having a hard time getting people together. And I think he had a hard time finding the right people as far as the right culture and things of that nature. And then one day he said, wait, I'm not even dressed how I normally dress. And so it became I think it might have been the trucker hat, which is really popular like 15 years ago. Look up some old videos like from Pharrell Williams and Neptune and Nerds, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, having the trucker hat on, and he had a bunch of tattoos on his arm, so he wore like a regular shirt, like a t-shirt, but the tattoos were showing where he didn't have it showing. There's a level of conservatism when it comes to Silicon Valley and even the other places that are involved in the tech scene, particularly at that time. At that time, when around the time shortly before this book came out, I was living in Silicon Valley. So I know exactly what she was talking about with the story. And I think he wore like Van shoes. So very much almost like a skater culture, for lack of a better term, if you want a shorthand for it. And suddenly he started finding people that didn't exactly look like him, but were of a similar idea and culture. The point is that you can't attract the people that are going to become your tribe if you're not looking like and acting like the culture that you want to represent. Like, for instance, I have a nice little blazer on. I have my shirt, even though it's getting a little bit older. I have my Bring Your Worst shirt is actually available at DamonBrown.net. And I'm just in my office. And, if it wasn't a school day, then you would hear my kids playing over there. That's the vibe. When you coach with me, it's the same stuff. When you read one of my books, like sorry, being octopus hands over here. When you read like the complete Bring Your Worth collection, shout out to y'all that came to the entertainment community fund keynote. I was in the same place, different shirt, different blazer, but same place because this fits the culture of the people like you that I coach. this TV show. There's no fancy studio, and it's not sponsored by ABC. No shots at ABC. It's just that's me. That's the type of people and the type of vibe that I want to have. That's just one little chapter in this. I don't even think it's a full chapter. I think the story I just gave you is like 3 pages. This one's like 300 pages long. Highly recommend it. It did really well as far as book sales for a reason. Highly recommend it. Shout out to Nilifer. If you're going to talk about how you're going to show up based on who you are, we got to talk about your creative power strategy. This is part of a series that I've been doing on Bring Your Worth TV. It started with Michael Jackson, Prince, and Jay-Z. You actually will see the link to that below as well. And then I followed it up about a year ago with Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole. They represented for the 80s going into the 90s, and then for these guys with the recent time in the early aughts, they represented the pinnacle of that particular music genre they were into, and they took three different approaches to mastering that particular music industry at the time. And so I'm not even going to get into the approaches because again, I did a whole video about it. I did a live show on it, all that stuff. But this is a great place to start and talking about how you want to essentially master the game. And you could do it do the traditional route, but there's risk to that. You can do the unorthodox route where the you learn from the industry and then you leave, or you can do the totally independent route where you're outside of the industry and then you're working with the industry a little bit, but you're able to create your own path. They all have risks to it, but definitely worth checking out. It's one of my favorite videos that I've done that I did in 2024. And it's a great discussion, I believe, right underneath as well, where there's quite a few comments where we're talking a little bit deeper about it. Be sure and check out the video if you haven't already. So, what about you? How are you defining who you are and what you bring to the table based on new factors in your life, particularly career wise? What parts of you were you not able to show or still aren't able to show within your work environment that maybe you can show now? Whether it's independent, which we'll talk about in a minute, or it's something within a new work environment that you're able to do. Let us know in the comments, even if you're watching the replay or the clips. Love to hear your take. Excuse me. I'm entrepreneur coach Damon Brown. You can reach me at damonbrown.net for if you want to coach with me, if you want the t-shirts and the mugs, what have you, even if you want to get my newest book, The Complete Bring Your Worth Collection, you can get it directly from me or at your favorite retailer. It's Bring Your Worth TV, live Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free. I promise there's no alcohol in this one. Speaking of AA, right? All right. And this is a bottom line type of thing, no pun intended. How do I increase my income? One of the biggest challenges we have when we're making a career pivot is we're like, well, it's kind of two different camps, right? There's a camp of, wow, my career has been, as we know it, the job as I know it is gone. I was not expecting that. I need to make some money right now. Or it's, hey, what I'm doing right now isn't quite cutting it, and I want to level up. Of course, the latter is a little bit more of a comfortable place to be because it's less urgency. But as fellow coaches, and I know some coaches watch this show. I coach some of you, coaching some of the coaches. But as fellow coaches know, and if you've been around the block a few times, you know that sometimes urgency and necessity is the mother of invention, and sometimes we need an urgency. I've shared stories where, I've worked with people and they didn't have any urgency. And therefore, whatever advice or guidance I gave to them fell flat. So we need some type of urgency to change. Otherwise, we're not going to change. This is part of human nature. Is kind of how it works. As far as increasing your income, there's a few ways to do it. The first one, obviously, is to ask for a raise. I mentioned this just to check it out, check off the box. The problem with raises is number one, well, right now we're almost clearly heading into a recession. Not financial advice, just we've been teetering on it for a few years now. So the chances of there being more capital for your boss, your supervisor, your company that you work for to give you, odds are not in your favor. Just rather be honest with you. Again, back to what I was talking about in the last segment. I'm gonna try to give you the truth as much as possible. To be honest with you, the odds are not in your favor. If you're able to get a raise, and I know people that have gotten raises in the last few months, blessings to you, fantastic. You don't want to bank on it though, no pun intended. Number two, your value, I call this bring your worth, your value might not be recognized by the leader that you're under and or the organization that you work with, at least financial value. So yeah, there's a lot of stats have been coming out recently saying that some of the best ways to actually get a raise is to get a new job, and then you actually will get an entry salary that's more commiserate. I think is the word, more commiserate with the new place that you're with the work that you're doing. You know what I mean? And so it's like, oh, why is that? Well, it's because you know, the, as the saying goes, I think the saying is, I'm going to paraphrase it, but the soothsayer isn't believed in his own village. In other words, sometimes you need to leave home to actually be respected at home. Been there before, right? So, whole nother story. Maybe we'll do a whole nother live about that. So, going for the raise, I'm young Gen X. That's that's baby boomer up language. We're not gonna bank on that. But if you can get it, hey, it's good work if you can get it, as they used to say. The second layer, as far as bringing in more income, is multiplying your streams of income. A lot of that comes from side hustles. Now, let's separate the two different types of side hustles. And in fact, one of them I wouldn't even consider a side hustle, but I need to clarify just to make sure that we have the same definitions. A side hustle is a business that you build that brings in income outside of your main income. That's it. That's a side hustle. Over here, we have a gig. And I don't mean like comedian gig or a music gig. Shout out to both of y'all. But no, I actually mean like the gig economy, the new terminology. Gig economy is you doing light work, often light work, through an app for a company, and they pay you per delivery or per like a la carte, piece by piece. And you're usually using your own tools, like using your own car for Uber or Lyft, right? That's different. I'm not talking about so gig work is there. It'll always be there. If that helps you keep food on the table for your family or get through a rough time, do it. Go for it. Just make sure you read the terms and conditions, T and C's, and make sure that you're actually making money on it. Because if you're putting a bunch of gas and mileage onto your car, and you have an older car, then it might not be worth the $50 you're getting from, say, the transport service. Random advice there. What we're really talking about is side hustles. Side hustles are things that you built up. Um, this show began as a side hustle in December of 2020. So we're going our 5 year anniversary at the end of the year. And so that was something where my main way of making a living was between journalism and my coaching, those two things. This ended up being another opportunity. If you remember December 2020, rough period of time for the earth. And so we were on lockdown because of COVID-19. And so I wanted an opportunity to continue to connect with y'all. Part of my money, that was a smaller amount. Part of my money came from public speaking, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to go on the road. Um, my former partner was a doctor, and so I was talking to her, and we are both looking at each other like, "Yeah, this isn't going to end anytime soon." So I was like, "All right," and it did take a while. So luckily, I built this show, and now we got 18,000 of y'all coming through, which I appreciate. And so, but this began as a side hustle. And now I have sponsors and I have the newsletter at joindamon.me, also began as a side hustle. So those things are things that you essentially built from scratch. I think in between that would be something like a franchise. Like if you became a franchise owner of a Subway or of a Chick-fil-A, that would be somewhere in between, right? Because it's not a business you're building from scratch, but it's not gig work either. And shout out to I know Chick-fil-A owners and people that have owned other franchises. Shout out to y'all. That's hard work, especially since you're not getting all the money because there's a certain amount, of course, that's going to corporate and certain rules and regulations that as an entrepreneur, I don't have any rules and regulations aside from the SEC or whatever. But when you work with a franchise, there's certain rules and regulations within their franchise, which is fair. They might even give you some of the upfront money so that you might have to pay that back. There's all kind of details depending on the franchise that you're interested in. Side hustle is something where you're going to be building something from scratch. It's usually just you, and it's probably connected to something that you're really into. And one of the best ways to find out what side hustle might work for you is to figure out what you're known for in and outside of the organization. What are you known for inside and outside the organization? So you might be pre-pivot. This is making up all kinds of words. Pre-pivot today. Excuse me. You might be pre-pivot today, so you're still within the organization that you're planning on leaving, or you feel like your time is going to be up soon, or you don't want to depend on just that source of income. So then, what are you known for within the organization? There might be a certain skill set that you have that you're always called on. Like, no matter what organization I was working with, people would always tell me stories. Now, quite a few of them knew I had a journalism background, but just because you have journalism background doesn't mean that people want to tell you their story. Those are two separate things. So it's like, oh, people like confiding in me. I found out later. That would be the big word I would use. So it made sense, I don't know, well into my journalism career when I was looking at pivoting and then I had sold my business. It's like, oh, and people are asking about coaching. Coaching might make sense because people want to share their stories with me, even if it's something that they feel shame or guilt about. I feel I'm pretty good at creating a emotional safety for them. Some of that is practice, but some of that is just how I am. So it usually ends up meeting in the middle, right? You have certain innate qualities within like things you're born with, but then you might also have like a certain skill set, like being a journalist for X number of years. And part of journalism, good journalism, is learning how to listen to people, understand what they're really trying to say, and giving them space to talk, whether you're broadcast or print like I was. So that made sense. That's what one of the things I was known for. So when the coaching opportunities started to come in, I was like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense because these skill sets match. Also, what you're known for outside of the organization. So it could be within your friend group, it could be within the neighborhood. My kids are involved in Cub Scouts and they go to karate school. There's a lot of nonprofit slash group organizing things. And you can see, I love systems and watching people and understanding how people interact. You can see like natural leadership here, or people that are really good at organizing, or people who are really good at fundraising and who are good at the accounting. You can see those natural things even in, say, your volunteer work, at your place of worship, at the where your kids or your older relatives get organized at the community centers. Those things naturally come out because we are who we are wherever we are, right? So, right, as I've learned in the past, it's like, yeah, I still have the journalism bug, even though I don't do as much journalism as I used to. So, yes, you can go and ask for a raise. More power to you if you can get it. Um, Building a side hustle will probably make more sense, and having multiple sources of income. I've had several videos about it, including one I'm about to introduce to you right now. So, I've had several sources of income for probably when I first started self-publishing books. I want to say my income started to multiply as far as streams, probably about 10 years ago. And then that led to me having the show, which is another stream of income. It's led to my coaching, another stream, like all these different pieces kind of come together. And then that allows me to, if the if there's not much going on financially with the show, then I have my coaching. If there's not much going on with the coaching, then I have a column that I do semi-regularly for Costco magazine. It's called Costco Connection. If you're familiar with Costco, the big box store. So I'm not a regular columnist, but I'll do a column or two a year for them. So money might come in from that. So it's all balancing it out. That makes it a lot easier for me to pivot and move from here to here. I have a couple big projects that, knock on wood, I'm looking to have come out by the end of this year. I'm able to allocate some resources, time or energy towards those because I know I have resources coming over here. I also do some consulting and ghostwriting. So I have that over here. All those different streams of income means that If this is going slow, I have these 8 other things that are happening. That allows me to, again, take care of my family, take care of myself, and not burn myself out. That's what I mean by pivoting before you have to. And if you're in an opportunity where your money is relatively stable, you just want more of it, and you're not in a crisis situation where you just lost your job, then take advantage of this time. That's the perfect time. The perfect time is not when you get the pink slip. The perfect time is not um, when suddenly your income source is gone. The perfect time is when everything's all right, because then you can ease into that. I think I talked about that in the original Bring Your Worth book, which I think I might have here. Oh, there it is. So I talked about that in the original Bring Your Worth book, which is included in the complete Bring Your Worth collection. Um, but I talk about that in here, where new ideas, new opportunities are like a Parisian croissant, where they're fluffy and they're light and they're beautiful, but you I don't mean like the croissants they make here in America. You can tell I'm a food guy, but I don't mean those, like the croissant sandwich from Burger King, which are delicious, by the way. No, I'm talking about the Parisian croissants where they just you put a little bit of weight on them, they just smash. That's what our dreams are. That's what our big ideas are. Is that if we put too much pressure on them, they're going to collapse. Not because they're bad, but because if, let's say, you're making $75,000 a year, and then you start a side hustle and you want to make 75,000 from that, you way too much pressure. Now, if you want to make $750, or hell, $75, do you see the difference? See that weight kind of get off your chest? That's what you want to do with this. So if you are an opportunity right now where your job is relatively secure, you have enough money, but you just want more, get the income streams going now, because nothing is guaranteed. As you get into your multiple income streams, two really important resources for you. The first one is from my man, Chris Gillenbaugh. Hope you're doing wonderful. He actually has a new book coming out about taking care of yourself and your mental health. I should be getting a copy soon. I'll definitely keep you guys posted on that. Side hustle from income, from idea. I got it backwards. See? Must be my day to day. From idea to income in 27 days. Fantastic book. Got it signed. Went on his book tour when I was back in Detroit, close to one of my hometowns, and it was fantastic connecting with him. 27 days. I know I've mentioned this book before. Today is April 2nd. By April 30th, you could be rocking and rolling. That's all I got to say. Case closed. That's it. My two favorite words, aside from, I guess, Bring Your Worth, would be my three favorite words. My favorite two-word couplet: passive income, passive income, passive income. Maximize your passive income. This came out about a year ago. It's all my best stuff about passive income. In fact, I need to do an update, so I'm glad we're talking about it today. I'll do an update later on this year for 2025. But for 2024, all this is still relevant. Check it out. One of my favorite episodes I did last year, as far as compilations. It's only about a half an hour long. If you're like, Damon, I want to build passive income, which, let's define it right now. Excuse me. Passive income would be income that you do not need to do much more work for. Now, it might be some tweaking you have to do. If you go to damebrown.net and you buy a copy of the complete Bring Your Worth collection, then I'll have to sign it and throw it in the mail. But the thing about passive income is that the work is already done. I talk about that in here in the video. But the brief version is that passive income, in my definition, is something that you create or do once, and then it sells over and over again. Books will be part of that, as with other things. And it really depends on where you're at, what your skill set is, and a lot of stuff we talked about in today's episode. Be sure and check it out. I want to say it's like 27 minutes long. It's worth your time. It's worth your time. I don't always say that. This one is worth your time. So are you looking to increase your income this year? Are you in a situation where you need more income? Let us know in the comments, and then I might be able to direct you to some other videos. And if you want to go deeper, damebrown.net. Maybe there's a way that we can work together. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown, and Bring Your Worth TV live Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You subscribe for free. And today we are talking about, as soon as I find it, how to pivot your career live Q&A. Thank you so much for coming through. I'm going to go ahead and if you're watching the replay of this, there's going to be a link to the video on passive income. Be sure and check that out because I would highly recommend it after this, especially if you're all excited to move on to the next level, which I'm excited for you if you're feeling that way. Till next time, remember you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.